of the Islamic sciences, and this is not going to be a majlis. So my perspective is very much coming from my own personal sense of self-development, my own personal journey, and my professional training, and the job I do. So I work as a psychologist, and in that job I see a lot of human distress, and I see a lot of extremes of human emotion. And I also see how difficulty in managing emotion, difficulty in managing intensity of emotion can impact upon us, and how it can have a crippling effect upon us. So one of my reasons for wanting to do this is for my own personal, it's an area of great interest and personal satisfaction for me to read the du'as of the Makarim. And also, it's to give myself and others a better understanding of conceptualizing our human journey and our human consciousness. We, in our jobs, in our psychological training, are trained in a particular way of understanding the human condition. So in my job, I have a very good sense of how I would use my framework to understand people who come with difficulty in managing distress, with difficulty in regulating their emotions, with difficulty in managing human emotion. And it can be so intense, the level of emotion, that it can be crippling. So I have a very good sound framework in terms of the scientific framework of how to understand that distress, the development of that distress, and what's maintaining that distress, and what we can do to try to identify factors to reduce that distress. But my interest comes from my personal area of interest in this gem, this treasure that we've been given, in terms of the inheritance that we have from our Prophet and from the Ma'sumin. These treasures give us a different way of conceptualizing the human condition. This is missing from my element in my work. So the level of the spirit, this different strata, this different level of the soul, the development of the soul, the journey of the spirit, that's missing from my work. So I like to bring it into my own understanding and to conceptualize the understanding of the human condition in this way, whenever I can and whenever I have the opportunity. And in my job, when I work with people of faith, what do we do as mu'min? Where do we go to when we have difficulties which we find unbearable? Where do we go to? It's not to say that Western medicine doesn't work and Western conceptualization doesn't work. It does, because it's based on scientific evidence. But we're missing a whole lot if we miss out the spiritual element. And what I find is that when I'm depressed, this is where I come. I come to Sahifa. And so the Imam, our master, who's developed this Sahifa Sajadiyah, you try to think about the way in which he developed it. What was his state of human consciousness? What was his state of development when he was writing these? He's written 15 whispered prayers. These are whispered prayers where he's having intimate conversations with his Lord, with his Creator. And there is no space for that. In my understanding, in my framework, in my training, there's no space for that. So I have to understand in which way, when I understand our relationship with the Almighty, this is how I understand the development of the process of human emotion, managing it, understanding it, and trying to come to terms with it. And my master, Imam Zainul Abidin, has taught me how to know my Creator. How do I know? How do I know my Creator? How do I know how to worship Him? How do I know who He is? And how do I know His qualities? It's the du'as of Imam Sajjad who have shown me who my Creator is, and what worshipping Him is, and in which way I should be worshipping Him. So this dua, Dua Makarim and Akhlaq, has had a very special impact upon me, because this talks about the development of the human soul, the human character, This is about character building. So in my job day to day, this is what I do. I help people with character building. This is about developing long-term motivation, goals, capacity building, building their potential, and building resilience, building strength. So when we work with people who come with psychological distress, we help them to identify their capacity and their capability and to try to stretch it and to develop that resilience. What I find in this dua is that we've been given a way in which to develop that resilience by creating that intimate connection with our Creator. This is our fitrah. This is what we are made to do. We turn to our Creator. We turn to that nature. So when I see depression, anxiety, anger, these are all extremes of these conditions, which we all have, so there's a continuum. This dua, the Makarim, Akhlaq, it covers all of those and much more. So that was just a little introduction, just to say that what I understand of this dua is about achieving excellence. Excellence and perfection of human qualities. So when we go to try to get help for our difficulties and we want to build ourselves up and build our characters up and make ourselves stronger and able to deal with the stresses of this world, this is where I would come first. This would be my first port of call. So the good thing is we have this as our first port of call as mu'min, as believers, and then we have the worldly services available to us as well, which is very important because that's a blessing to us. We've been shown the way. That's the way in which God says there's help for you available, there's support for you available. What I understand of this dua, that this is about achieving excellence of moral characteristics. We shouldn't be afraid of trying to achieve perfection. So these days, there's this limited focus on competitiveness and on achieving the highest levels. Actually, we've been taught by our Hyderi, we've been taught to try to aim for perfection, to try to aim for the highest characteristics. The way in which I understand how we can go forward to understanding this dua Makarim Akhlaq, is to try to have a framework in which to understand it. Has everyone, I have got limited copies, I've got I think 19, 20 copies. So before we look at these, I just want to introduce a framework in which to try to understand this dua. When we look at it, how can we say this is about the development of noble moral traits? So how do we know how to try to develop noble and moral traits? If we are aiming to elevate ourselves, this is because this is about dignity, this is about elevating ourselves through developing moral virtues of excellence. And just consider the context in which the Imam, so I put asceticism up there because that's the context in which the Imam wrote his du'as. This is in which he developed and created these du'as. Because just imagine after the events of Karbala, what his human condition must have been. If we think in our lives, we have despair, we have grief, we have devastation, and we see it around us. But think of the context in which he wrote this, in which he developed this. He developed this for us, because they're our role models. We look to them to see if this is the kind of despair they've been through. What is it that led them to come out the other end successfully? What is it that helped them and supported them to get through that grief? So asceticism is just there because that's his way of disregarding the world. So the world wasn't important to him. So I remember a hadith actually just of Imam Zayn al-Abidin, where he said he was passing a beggar, and he saw this beggar crying and crying, and he said to him that nothing in this world, if you had the whole of the world in your hand and then you lost the whole of the world, that's not worth crying for. So when I think about that, it contextualizes things for me. It gives me a bit of a better understanding of putting things into perspective. So I guess one of the ways in which it helps me is to put things into perspective. So when something big happens, something distressing happens, it helps me to balance my thinking about that thing. And how devastating is it really? Let's consider this dua within the framework of virtue ethics. A virtue ethics is it's always been around, but now it's coming up as a kind of a movement. A group of us are working in this area, and it's all based on common sense, and it's what we already know. It's nothing different from what we already know, but it just helps us to understand, in terms of developing noble moral traits, what is the framework in which we should be looking to develop those qualities. Okay, so there's a movement to return to Haqiqat al-Nabi, which is the Haqiqat of the Prophet. So this is the being of the Prophet. This is how the Prophet was. He symbolized, he was an emblem of those qualities. So it's a combination of wisdom applied to the balance of the nafs, self-mastery in accordance with our primordial fitra. So this is about balancing. So this is saying that we need to have wisdom, and we will always have emotions and desires and passion, but let's balance them to develop the nafs. Okay, so this leads to development of virtues, of excellent traits of character. These are some of the excellent traits which we're going to look at in here. Okay, and this is between the two extremes of our emotions and desires. For example, the two extremes of excess, like elation, joy, and then you've got the other extreme of deficiency, where you've got loss, you've got lack of hope, you've got hopelessness, you've got helplessness. So what we always strive to do, and this is in keeping with all of Islamic teaching, is adopt the middle way, is have moderation and balance. So the reason for this is that it ultimately leads to justice. That's the idea behind it, that we need to ultimately get to the point of justice. So the purpose of mankind is to establish justice on this planet. This is the foundation of virtue ethics. So Haqiqat al-Nabi, or virtue ethics, is the blessing for the whole of mankind. It's embodied in the character of the Holy Prophet and his progeny. So this is a couple of quotes from the Prophet ﷺ. I was raised up as a prophet to perfect the most noble traits of character. I was sent to perfect morality. Indeed, your character is of tremendous nature. So what we're being told is that be mindful of your character. Be careful of your character. It's very easy to disregard that in day-to-day things. We get busy, we're tied up, we're all full on. But be mindful of your character. Come back to everything you do. Your character will be shown in it, will be displayed in it. Because your character, the inside, there will always be an outward manifestation of that character. So develop that inside. Be mindful of your character. It is important, and we should be aiming to achieve excellence in our characters. So virtue is excellent character traits. And ethics is the knowledge of knowing what to do. So here we're talking about practical wisdom. We're talking about practically applying that knowledge. And why is there an emphasis on wisdom? So we've got hikmah, which is wisdom, in the sense of the theoretical, rational sense of wisdom, yeah? And then that's differentiated from akhl, and that is referred to that which binds us back to the Almighty God. Why? Because that fulfills our purpose. That's the practical wisdom. So we've got hikmah, which is the rational, theoretical wisdom, which is differentiated from the practical wisdom. So what we need to remember here is that it's not just developing the excellence in moral traits. It's about applying that practically. Okay, so for most of us, our actions are governed by emotions, and that's a fact. We do something because we desire it. We do something because we're motivated to do it. There's something which instigates us to do our actions. Desires, passions, feelings, they all lead us to want to do our next step. Okay, so this is why even when we demonstrate any single virtue, generosity, honesty, kindness, these are all virtues, but is it enough? So what we're saying is, what we're arguing here is it's not enough. It's not enough to demonstrate those virtues. If it is driven out of our emotions and not wisdom, it will fail to produce justice. Why? Because the proportion will lack the right balance. So what we're saying here is it's important to develop those noble moral traits. However, we cannot develop them in a vacuum. They need to be developed within the understanding of wisdom, practical wisdom in which to apply them. And here, this is where we need to have the rational thinking. Okay, so virtue ethics calls for the practice of training, of using wisdom to balance our emotions in order to develop those virtues. So it's not just about saying, out of context, let's develop good friendship relations. Let's develop kindness, let's develop compassion. It needs to be done for a purpose, for the purpose of justice. So the tendencies of any traits like honesty or generosity, it does not make one virtuous. Developing long-term practice of using these traits with wisdom, proportionally, as required in each situation that we're in, according to the circumstances. So that's what we should be aiming for. The point here is, if we're mindful of our motivations and our desires and our passions and our interests, that's absolutely fine, because that's what gives us the springboard. That's what gives us that lift. What we need to be mindful of is, how are we using those qualities? So are we using them in terms of practical application through rational thought? So a lot of consideration as to the reasons for our actions instead of just being driven by impulse. So developing kindness, generosity, controlling your anger, learning to forgive, forbearance, respecting others, valuing honesty, fulfilling promises, being brave and courageous. So just reeling off this list. What we need to do is to use wisdom with each of these virtues in order to develop that deeper understanding of ma'rifat. Because without the practical wisdom, without the akhl, they're just left as virtues. It's not virtue ethics. And they have to have an ultimate sense to fulfill a purpose. Okay, so hence the extreme difficulty of being able to conquer the nafs. So when we say it's really difficult to conquer the nafs, and this requires a process of long-term training in rational thinking, it's because even though we might have all those great qualities of compassion and forbearance and kindness, but what are we doing it for? It's really important to keep addressing and being mindful, coming back to addressing and readdressing our intentions. What are we doing it for? Even if the outcome is good, what's the ultimate purpose? Okay, so now we can get into just to set the framework for this, for understanding the development of these noble moral characteristics. There's it's number 20, Dua al-Sahifa, And it's recommended, Allama Majlisi recommended on Makhsus dates to read this dua with dua al-tawbah, because you read dua al-tawbah first, then that's about cleansing you, cleansing you of your sins, purifying you. Once you're empty and you're ready, you're a vessel to receive. So once you've read dua al-tawbah, you're ready to receive this dua, Makarim al-Akhlaq, because then it's about adding to yourself, building to yourself, and building those noble moral characteristics. So this, as I see this dua, how I read it, is that this is about the struggling, this is my own understanding of it. It's about the human consciousness, and this embodies the struggling believer. The other du'as do as well, but this one does more, because there are specific du'as, as you know, in Sahifa for all different situations, for worry, for grief, for hardships and so on. This one is about struggle in the development of yourself. So you're asking the Almighty to help you with excellence in your akhlaq. This, I'm going to briefly, this is where you can look at this, is briefly talk about an understanding, a tafsir. This is an exegesis of, a brief exegesis of this this dua from Sheikh Murtada al-Adina, and he talks about the 10 P's, akhlaq, characteristics, which come out, 10 themes which come out in this dua. After this, I'm going to rush through it, if that's okay. Do you know? Okay, what's the time now? Okay, that's fine, because this is wrong, right? This is wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to rush through these, if that's okay, so that at the end we have about 15 minutes for discussion, because there's some specific things that I think it would be good to pick up on. So these are general themes, and afterwards, in terms of the title is the psychological benefits of Dua Makarim al-Akhlaq. So I would like to have a bit of an interactive discussion, if we have 15 minutes at the end, to talk about the psychological benefits of this dua, and then we can pick out some specific things. So let's turn to the general themes. Okay, so the first theme is to develop perfect faith. So this is on the first page. So where I've marked mine, but unfortunately I printed them before marking, so you don't have marks on yours. But I'm just going to read out what I've underlined. So the first one is that the Imam is asking the Almighty to give him perfection. Oh Allah, bless Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, cause my faith to reach the most perfect faith. Akmal al-Iman, the most perfect. So Kamal is the developing of yourself. This is Akmal, this is the highest level, the most perfect faith. He's asking for perfection from the outset. So we shouldn't be afraid. We're emulating them, they're our role models. Go for perfection from the outset. This is about your character. We can't afford to not strive for perfection. We will do the best we can, but the starting point that the Imam has given us, look what starting point he's given us. He's saying, we're not starting at point 1 to 10, we're saying we're going straight to 10. Give me Akmal al-Iman, the highest level of perfection in my faith. And then he said, make my certainty the most excellent certainty. Afdal al-Yaqeen, Afdal, the highest level of certainty. So we're talking perfection in your faith. So I'm going to rush through these. I'll go to the second one, which is priorities. So once we've developed that level of faith and belief, so certainty is what? It's absolute belief. It's the level higher than belief. So this is when you believe, and then when you know for sure. So certainty, can you just remember that concept of certainty, because I want to come back to it afterwards. Once we have developed that level of faith, that perfection in faith, that perfection in belief and certainty, what next? Oh my Lord, help me to prioritize. Okay, so the next theme is priorities. It's about halfway down. Spare me the concerns which distract me. About halfway down on on the first page. Okay, so yashghuluni al-ihtimam bihi, spare me the concerns which distract me and employ me in that about which you will ask me tomorrow. So really we're already saying we must focus. We must start focusing. There's loads of things we could be concerned about. Let's be concerned about the main important things. Let's start to narrow. Let's really streamline and focus. Okay, the next one is pride. So what happens next? Free me from need and expand your provision towards me. And when you expand your provision towards me, and mashallah, the Almighty Creator, He gives us, alhamdulillah, He gives us. When He expands His provision towards us, what's the next thing? Immediately the Imam says, don't tempt me with ingratitude. وَلَا تَفْتَنِي بِالْبَطِرِ. So don't tempt me with ingratitude. And then you continue, you see here, continue at the bottom of the first page, and corrupt not my worship with self-admiration. وَلَا نَفْسِدْ إِبَادَتِي بِالْعُجْبِ. Don't corrupt it with self-admiration. So this is about the importance of tackling, of processing, first understanding the pride and how pride can easily get within us. It's not difficult. Even we might be the most people who are, do you understand parhezgar? Parhezgar, do you understand that word? Okay, it's an Urdu word. I can't really find an English translation. Keeping back, keeping away. We might be the most people who are forbearing, held back, and yet pride is so easily can so easily come within us that the Imam says that straight away when he says give, but then don't tempt me with ingratitude. And then the next page, raise me not a single degree before the people. Now look at the next page. This is here. Raise me not a single degree before the people without lowering me, it's like in myself. This is how much humility the Imam has asked us to take on. How much humility we should be having, we should be developing. So, don't raise me even the slightest before people without me, myself, examining myself and lowering myself even further and saying, actually, look how much more I need to develop. Okay, so we go on to the fourth one, prolonged life. That's here, about 2/3 of the way. The Imam says, let me live as long as my life is a free gift in obedience to you. So give me the prolonged life. But what should I occupy my prolonged life with? My life, if it becomes a pasture for the Satan, if it becomes, if my life should become pasture for Satan, seize me straight away, take me to yourself. And the next bit is really, really interesting. Before your hatred overtakes me, or your wrath against me becomes firm, it means we've got time. We've got time to develop before the ghazab of God. So what we're saying is, God, protect us. Let us seek refuge from your wrath, from your anger. Give us time before it becomes firm. Then give me time. Give me that prolonged space. Give me time to develop those qualities. But if it comes to that case, that Satan's going to overtake, then seize me to yourself straight away. And deposit in me no quality, this is at the bottom of page 2, deposit in me no quality for which I will be faulted unless you set it right. So what we're saying here, we're again giving that, asking Him for the ultimate development of each and every one of those qualities. So every quality that you give to us, that we ask you for, that you develop in us, don't let us go from this world where it's still like this, mediocre. unless you've set it right. Otherwise, take us before we have the opportunity to use that quality in a satanic way. Okay, the next theme, peace and reconciliation. So this is really an important, for me, this is one of the, I won't spend too long on it. If we have time at the end, we can spend a bit longer on it. This is one of the most important aspects for me personally because of my job, because of what I do. This is about relationship building. This is about maintenance of relationships. This is about our akhlaq towards others and how we interact and connect with others. So, when people come for psychological distress, the majority of distress, the foundation, the basis of it is relational, is our difficult relations with others. And God says to us in the Quran that I will test you with your relations with others. So this, speaking about peace and reconciliation, is about how to develop those relationships with others and develop our level of characteristics where we have the utmost akhlaq in our relations with others. Okay. So, if you look about a third of the way down, the enmity of those close with friendship. So what God is saying that replace the enmity of those people who are close with me with friendship. The disrespect of womb relatives with devotion. The abandonment of relatives with help. And then later on, the bitterness of the fear of wrongdoers with the sweetness of security. Just if we think about that a little bit, the rejection of fellows with general friendliness, so those who have rejected us, replace that with friendship. So develop in me those qualities and those characteristics whereby despite rejection, I can be friendly towards others. And rejection is a huge thing. It affects us a lot and it causes us to have all sorts of negative beliefs about ourselves. But replace that with friendliness so I'm able to go above and beyond that rejection. The bitterness of the fear of wrongdoers, so those people who've done me wrong, those people who I fear. And look what he uses, the words he uses is sweetness of security. Let me have security, because when we have fear, what's the opposite of that? When we're anxious, we're fearful, we're making predictions about what might happen, we're making negative predictions. The answer to that is developing security. So when we have security, we won't have those other traits of fearfulness and anxiety. And these are normal human traits and qualities. So this is why this is the ultimate expression of development of self, because it is very, very difficult to try to achieve that level of security, because we're all going to have anxieties, we're all going to have worries, we're all going to have uncertainties. But what the Imam is asking is, let me have security in response to these fears and anxieties. Okay, let's go to the next one. 6, prevailing over harm. Okay, so again it's on this page here, and appoint for me a hand against him who wrongs me. So there's a balance to everything. So where there's friendship and extending the hand of friendship to others and developing excellent akhlaq towards others, there's also a point at which when those who are wrongdoers and they're oppressors and they're being unjust, we have to, it's our moral obligation and duty to be able to face them and to be able to address them and to be able to respond to them in an appropriate way. So it's again our moral obligation to stand up to those who are oppressors and unjust. Give me guile against him who schemes against me, power over him who oppresses me, and let me refute him who reviles me. We have to protect ourselves. This is about developing our human dignity. Yes, we have to have humility. We have to have excellent relations with others and extend the hand of friendship. But there's a point at which we have to protect our dignity. And we've been given that balance. We've been given that knowledge, and that we've been commanded, we've been shown by our role models about how to attain that balance in achieving our dignity and protecting ourselves and not letting others oppress us and be unjust towards us, but also having humility. That's sometimes a very difficult, again, all of these are difficult traits to develop. And that's why we're asking in this dua, the Imam is asking, begging his Lord to help him to develop these excellence in these traits. Okay, so let's go to number 7. It's the next page over. Okay, so it's about midway down. Adorn me with the adornment of the righteous. Wahalni bihaliya as-salihin, with the righteous. So this is about piety. Let me develop that piety. Zinat al-muttaqeen. So what we're saying is here, the next line, Zinat al-muttaqeen, ornaments of the God-fearing. So not only should we have taqwa, but look at the kind of taqwa he's asking for. He himself is Zainul Abidin. Yeah, he has taught us what worship is. He's the ornament of the worshippers. He's not just a worshipper. He is the beauty of the worshippers. He's Sayyid al-Sajjad. He is the chief of the prostrators. He has shown us what it is to worship. So he's telling us, this is how you ask your Lord. Don't ask him just for taqwa. Ask him for excellence in everything. Ask him to clothe you in the ornaments of the God-fearing. That level of taqwa, that you embodied, you're clothed in taqwa. Zinatul muttaqeen. Okay. If you turn over the page, this continues. The piety, the taqwa, it continues here. I've just chosen a few examples here, midway. Making little of the good in my words and deeds, though it be much. When you have taqwa, you have awareness, you have mindfulness, you're aware of your level of development, because you're always striving to get to the next level of development. So what the Imam is asking here is that even though the words and the deeds that I have, let me make little of them. Even though others think it's much, let me know that they are little, because I'm constantly striving for the next level of development. And the next sentence, making much of the evil in my words and deeds, though it be little. Even though I may, this is not for the ma'soom, this is for us. Even though I may go astray, even though it might be little, but let me think it's big. Why? Because if I think it's little, then I'm not going for excellence. Then I'm saying it's okay, mostly I'm good. But even the littlest things, let us be mindful of them, so that we make a lot of them. Because only when we make a lot of them and we put them in high significance, then we will do something about them. Okay, so the theme again and again and again is about achieving the highest level of akhlaq, of morals and traits. We're not going to settle for getting better. Our aim is at the highest level, at the top, at the peak. Okay, let's go to the next one, number 8. Persistent prayer in problems. So, when we are mindful of these levels that we need to be achieving, we're mindful, we've asked God to help us, we've asked Him to help us to overcome the smallest deficiencies in us and to reach the highest levels. How will we maintain that? So the 8th one is extremely important in maintenance. It's persistence. You see in the Quran again and again, in all the stories of the Nabi, the Prophet Ibrahim, Prophet Dawood, Allah says, and my servant came to me again and again, he was oft returning to me. So the point is, we do our wajibat, our five daily prayers, But you'll see in the qualities of the Aimma Tahirin, of all the prophets, that wasn't enough. We are trying to get here. We're trying to get to the peak of perfection. So my servant is oft returning to me. He's coming again and again and again. He's coming in the day, he's coming in the night. He's coming for prolonged prostration. So the point here is persistence in prayer. So it's not enough to pray once and to say, I fulfill my obligation. We hold on and we persist and we continue. And this is how we maintain those qualities that we've asked God for so far in all those akhlaq, those qualities of akhlaq. Okay, so if you look at this one, oh Allah, make me leap to you in times of distress. It's at the top, fourth line down. Make me leap to you in times of distress and ask from you in needs and plead to you in misery. Let me go. The Imam is saying, let me go to you and only you. Tempt me not to seek help from other than you when I am distressed. So what's he saying here? What is the Imam saying? Don't tempt me to go anywhere else. If I come back to you again and again and again, I'll know that you are my stores. It says later on in the dua, you are my stores in my sorrows. I know that it's you. You are my ultimate goal. So in our day-to-day lives, when we're distressed, think about who we go to. We go to our friend, we go to our partners, we go to our doctor, and we go to get psychological support and help. That's fine. And that's absolutely fine, because these are all wasila for us to, God's given these as blessings and support for us in this world. But the first port of call is who? Make me go to you again and again to relieve my distress. Don't tempt me to go to anyone else. So this is about persistence in your prayer during your problems. And even if you think it's not working, persist. That's the message I get from this dua, is to persist and keep going to the Almighty. Okay, let's go to number 9. Protection from shaitan. So once we have developed, again, this is about this stage by stage development in this dua. Just look at the beauty of it. How the Imam is going from one stage of development to the other in asking God to perfect his akhlaq and his noble moral traits. Once we have certainty that we will go to you, O Lord Almighty, our Creator, once we have that certainty and we have habituation in our practice, means we're used to it, we're practiced in it, we will go to you again and again and again. We now know, we're comfortable with that, we're assured we will only come to you. Then what? Then don't let it come to the point where we become complacent. Then he says, protect us, protect me from shaitan. If you look about here in this page, the 9th one, more than halfway down. Oh Allah, make that which Satan throws into my heart, such as wishing, doubt and envy, even turn that into a remembrance of your mightiness, a reflection upon your power and a devising against your enemy. So what we're saying is, we're not going to be free of the shaitan. There's always going to be some whisperings, some possibilities, some situations where we're going to go astray, and this is despite we're developing to this level. We're persistent in our prayers, we're oft returning to him. And still, the Imam is asking, protect me from shaitan. So look at how difficult it is to have mastery over our nafs. It really is, it's a very difficult process, and it doesn't mean we can't train ourselves to do it. The whole point about character building is training ourselves to do it. Okay. So what the Imam is saying is that turn every negative thing that might be thrown at me from the shaitan into a positive thing to remember you and your might. Okay, and that continues. If you go to the next page, let me be busy. So he said, let me busy myself in a speech in praise of you. Let me praise you. Let me eulogize you. Let me have an excursion in magnifying you. Let me acknowledge your beneficence. So this whole page is again saying, let me glorify you, let me magnify you, instead of being diverted by the shaitan. Let this be an exercise for me in protecting myself against the shaitan, in magnifying you. Okay, can we turn to the, sorry that they're not page numbered. Can we turn to the following page, the next page? The one that starts with, oh Allah bless Muhammad, wa ali Muhammad, at the top there. And it says, oh Allah, bestow your bounty upon me. Have you got it? Okay. So after all this process, what is the ultimate? What are we looking for? What's the goal? The ultimate end goal is the self-purification. And I know that you benefited from the lectures of Sheila Bai in developing the purification of yourself. So what does the Imam say here? So if you go down up to about here, 3/4 of the way down the page, oh Allah, take to yourself from my soul what will purify it. This is absolutely beautiful, really important to take our time and to understand this. Today is just a very, very brief introduction and very rushed. This in itself is, if you look at every sentence in this dua, you could spend a very long time trying to understand every sentence and doing tafsir of it, because everything comes from a place of complete understanding of the human condition. And that's what our Makarim were blessed with, is to have that complete understanding of the human condition. If they didn't have that, they wouldn't act as our role models. So let's read this about self-purification. Oh Allah, take to yourself from my soul what will purify it, i.e., what I have left which is impure, take that and purify that part of my soul, and leave for my soul that of my soul that will set it right. So what we're saying here is, the parts which are not purified, take those parts and purify them. Again, we're giving the ultimate control, because God is the ultimate owner of change. If we want that change, we can work hard and develop ourselves, but ultimately we're going to ask Him to purify us. So every change that happens within us, He is the ultimate owner of that change. So what we're saying here is, take that part of my soul which is not pure and purify it. And anything else which I can do, which I can rectify in this world, which I can work hard on and struggle and change, leave that to me, leave it, and let me set it right. Let me work on it. But those parts which I cannot work on, please don't leave them impure. So what the Imam is saying, take them and purify those aspects. So he's not leaving anything to chance. Do you see that? He's not leaving anything to... He's saying there's no possibility except to have that ultimate excellence in development of my character. Don't leave anything to chance. God, even if there's some bits of it which are impure, which I will not be able to rectify and purify in this world myself, you take those aspects and you purify them. For my soul will perish unless you preserve it. He is the ultimate owner, but we have to ask, and we have to try, and we have to struggle. Oh Allah, this is the bit I was referring to. You are my stores when I sorrow. Okay, so now we finished the 10, kind of the tafsir of those 10. Let us talk a little bit about, specifically, the psychological distress which we all experience. And what does the Imam say about that psychological distress? How can it be rectified? How can it be answered? How can it be processed? So here you've got a very good example of depression. This is clear. Depression is what? You can hear me, isn't it? If I Did that come out? Yes. Oh, yes. Okay. When we're depressed, what are the qualities of depression? How do we know we're depressed? So these are the characteristics we have: hopelessness, helplessness, loss underlies depression. So depression is developed when we experience a loss, yes? So we experience a loss, and it's common, it's not uncommon, it's very normal to have a depressive reaction. And depression is what? It's formed of lots of negative beliefs about ourselves, negative beliefs about other people, negative beliefs about the future. So what happens when we are depressed? The Imam says, come to God. When you are depressed, come to God. You come to your Lord. When you're depressed, when you're anxious, come to your Lord. When you're angry and you can't control your anger, come to your Lord. Right? So in depression, this is really key what he says here. Oh Allah, you are my stores when I sorrow. You are my stores. What does that mean? There's a whole storage there. There's a whole area where you can seek refuge. There's shelter and there's protection. You are my stores when I sorrow. So when I have grief, when I feel hopeless and helpless, you are the place I go to. You are my refuge. You are my recourse when I'm deprived. So when you have loss, what happens? You feel deprived. I go to you. If you turn the next page. From you I seek aid when troubled. So I turn to you. Whatever the cause of my trouble, I turn to you. And the next one answers this loss. It's absolutely beautiful. And with you is a substitute for everything gone by. When we experience losses, we lose our homes, we lose our jobs, we lose financial security, we lose our husbands, our wives. But it says for you, the Imam is saying, just hold on to yourselves, because everything is with Him. With God, there is a substitute for every loss. And a change from everything you is approved. There's a mistake there. Okay, the way I understood that is that everything is approved from you. Every change will be approved from you. So when God provides you with a substitute of what you have lost, that change will be approved from Him, because He is the ultimate owner of change. He will give you, He will replace for you what you have lost. Okay, now I just want to spend a little bit of time thinking about anxiety. Okay, so the three main emotions which we work with: depression, anxiety and anger. And there are lots of other emotions as well. So the two big ones which I see in clinic are anxiety and depression, and they can be so debilitating that actually we stop functioning. The power of our emotions over us can be so strong if we let it, because it can be crippling. It means that you stop doing what you're doing. So it means that you're not functioning and you're not adaptive in your day-to-day lives anymore. What is it that stops you from doing that? What is it that stops you from continuing in a stable, steadfast and sturdy way when the emotion grips you? And this is what this dua means to me, is to develop the regulation of those emotions. Regulate them. Balance them. This dua is about balance. Balance them. Go to Him. Because if you're finding something difficult to manage, go to Him. He's your stores. He's your refuge. Go to Him and ask Him for balance. When we have anxiety is a different term. anxiety, I'll just speak. Anxiety is conceptualized as, the way we understand anxiety is when we're making predictions that something will happen, yes? So when we're worried about something, we're anxious about something, why? It's because we're making negative predictions that something bad will happen, or things will go against plan, or we don't know what will happen, or we're uncertain. So the bottom line is uncertainty, isn't it? We're not certain. We're making negative predictions about what might happen. Uncertainty is a human condition. Every day we face uncertainty. We don't know, I don't know if I'm going to open that door, fall downstairs, and end up in hospital. No. But anyway, we don't know what might happen. Anything might, we're not even certain when we open the door what might happen. Yeah? So, uncertainty is something we live with. It's a normal human condition. However, as with everything, if we don't balance it, it will get out of hand. So this is when worry gets out of hand to the extent where we stop doing what we're doing. So we know the impact that it has on our lives when we stop our day-to-day functioning and we're not adapting. So what does the Imam say about uncertainty? If you go back to the first page, right at the top, this is the very first thing we looked at. Make my certainty, waj'al yaqini afdal al-yaqin. Make my certainty the most excellent certainty. Okay, so this is where I want to, if ladies have time and you want to discuss, this is where I'd like to discuss the concept of yaqeen and certainty and connected with the anxiety. And also any other concepts that you'd like to discuss about whether you think that it's possible to develop certainty. And it would be good to hear your views and to get an interactive discussion going. Whether you think it's possible, if we know that uncertainty is the cause of our anxiety and the cause of so many difficulties for us, how possible do you think it is to develop certainty? And think in your own day-to-day lives. How easy has it been for you to develop certainty? Because look what comes right at the top. It's certainty. Faith and certainty. So this goes hand in hand. So what we're saying here is the Imam is telling us he's asking God first and foremost to develop his faith to the level of the utmost level of faith, and with it the utmost level of certainty. So in order to have faith, do we need to have certainty? And if we don't have certainty and we're uncertain and we're individuals who worry and have anxieties, does that mean that our faith is not strong? So it's just something for you to ponder about and to discuss if you wish. But otherwise, I've finished. Everyone's very quiet. If you'd like to continue to discuss, I'm happy to discuss. Because it is 12 o'clock, so I finished on time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Can I just say one, I think if we did have certainty, obviously, like if we were certain that the day of judgment, we were certain that we'd be facing Allah, we'd be accountable, then we wouldn't do anything bad, then, I think we are lucky in that. I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
I didn't understand, it says, oh Allah, take to yourself from my soul what will purify it.
Yeah.
And then the next bit, I don't understand.
Okay, so this is the way I understood it, because this is, which page is it on? Because it's, yeah. Okay, so this is it's not page numbered, but,
Fifth from the back.
okay, so this is, alright, great, thanks. Fifth from the back, oh Allah, take to yourself from my soul what will purify it, and leave for my soul that of my soul that will set it right. And this is what we have down for number 10 for purify as an example. By the way, the ones I've highlighted are just examples of all of these 10 themes. You'll find plenty of other examples of these 10 themes throughout the du'as, throughout this du'a. Okay, how I understand it is that our purpose is to achieve maximum, an optimal level of development. I understand it in terms of building of the self. So this is development of the self. Purification of the nafs that's a whole other topic. Purification of the nafs means achieving closer. The way to achieve purification of the nafs, and one way to do it, is to achieve closeness to the Almighty. And in the Quran we'll see many examples of how God says, purify, come to me, pray, do namaz, come to me, and be oft returning to me to purify your nafs. I.e., the more you come close to me, the more your nafs will be purified. Now, and that makes sense, isn't it? The more we go to something tahir, we go to some tahir water, and we clean ourselves more with it. The more we clean ourselves, we're going to stay purified for longer, isn't it? The more frequently we go and get ourselves cleaned. So, there are always going to be impurities in us which we cannot get rid of ourselves despite our struggle. So at the very beginning, I said, this is how I decided, this is the struggle of a believer. This dua is the struggle of the believer. So if we're struggling and we're developing, there's going to be certain aspects we're still going to not be able to purify, although we might be mindful of them. The more we come back and we reflect, because it's a process of self-reflection. So what the Imam is asking is, you take responsibility, O Lord, for those aspects of myself which I have not been able to purify. And those which I can do, let me struggle. So the next sentence is, leave for my soul that of my soul that will set itself right. So I'm going to struggle, I'm going to develop myself, and I'm going to rectify those aspects. So let me do those that I'm struggling with, but take from me those which are impure. Do you get? Okay.
If I just give you a small example, this particular person hates parking. Every time they don't narrow and park the car, it suffers with really severe anxiety because in their history, every time they go down narrow roads and park, they get into trouble, they find it difficult, and all that kind of stuff. So, how do you stop that person then from being anxious in an environment where they can condition themselves to get anxious?
Exposure. So anxiety is reduced by increased exposure. So what happens is that anxiety is like this, okay? So say you have time 1, time 2, time 3. So this is the first day, second day, third day. You're exposed to an anxiety provoking situation. Okay, your anxiety here is 10, it's 20, 30, 40, and so on, okay? Time 1, your anxiety is going to be off the scale, right? It's going to be here, your anxiety. Then the next day you'll actually say, well, I did that, it wasn't too bad, but I'm still anxious, I'm not completely sure. Your anxiety will be here, okay? So the third day, your anxiety will definitely be a lot lower. So what we know about anxiety is that it does go down, maybe not this rapidly, I'm being a bit optimistic, it does go down, but then it tapers off, right? It doesn't go, it will taper off. Okay, the way in which to reduce anxiety is increased exposure to the feared stimuli. Okay, so the anxiety-provoking stimulus, if it's narrow roads, it's increased exposure to it. Because if it's narrow roads, your friend is making predictions. Okay, she's making predictions that she will get stuck, she'll get claustrophobic, she'll get caught, she'll get trapped, police will come, whatever the predictions are, she's making anxious predictions that something will happen. Now, she goes one day, that didn't happen. She goes the next day, didn't happen. She needs to go a number of days and then the anxiety will taper off. Increased exposure means that you are testing your hypothesis. The negative predictions you're making, you need to test those hypotheses. If you don't test them, then you're never gonna, your anxiety is always going to stay there because you're not exposing yourself to it.
If I have anxiety that will my son, for example, be a good Muslim later, so, am I down, is that a negative? Is that like, am I doubting Allah's, I don't know, that Allah will guide him, or is it a good worry that this is some, is there a good worry?
There's no, okay, so there's no good worry. Worry isn't good. The reason I say that is because it's the goal of the Imams, and they've said that, that like Imam Ali said, that grief is half of old age. And you've seen so many calls of the Imams that say, what Imam Ali, perfect example of, he has several statements about how to develop happiness, or how to develop, what is happiness. And one of them is, don't worry. Whatever happens, don't worry. And that's what we work on as well. When we do interventions for worry, we want to reduce the worry. Ideally, we want to completely minimize it. Worry is a normal human concept. We all have it. It's on a continuum. So here's the continuum, and here we are going to have like the most people here, right? So at very little levels of worry, you'll have very few people. That's really extreme, like not to have any worry. And then again, you'll have very few people here who are at the highest level of worry, who are going to be worrying all the time. So mostly we fall in here, in kind of this bell curve, right? Now, those people who come to clinic, who come to access psychological support for their worry, they're more on this side, because their worry has become so impacting for them that they find it difficult to cope with. Here, we've got a normal kind of healthy level of worry, which is, not saying it's good worry, but it's healthy, it's balanced, because it's not impacting upon us. How do we know when it becomes unhealthy? Is when it impacts upon us, and it stops us from doing our day-to-day activities. So there is a lot of intervention that we can do for worry.
What about a person who has had so much bad luck in life that she has come to a point when she's experiencing... what about a person who has had so much bad luck in life, just sort of, our usual bad luck sometimes, which you can overlook, and now she's come to the point where she's experiencing so much hopelessness, which is really taking over her life.
Okay, so in depression, there are levels of, as we said, loss, grief, helplessness, hopelessness. Okay, now the experiences that we have in our life are going to be adding and adding. So you're absolutely right. The more experiences and negative experiences and difficulties that you have in your life, they're going to be adding to your burdens. And you can. This is about how you understand them. Okay, so the key thing is about how you conceptualize it. How do you interpret what's going on? So one of the main things in developing what might be a mitigating factor to developing depression is our appraisal of the life events. Okay, so it might be difficult negative life events, but it's how you appraise them, how you put them into context, how you give them balance, and how you stand back and look at them with another lens, through another perspective. So when you've got hopelessness, it's a very difficult situation because your negative thoughts are quite firmly entrenched by then, and they're difficult to change. So the only thing I would suggest if you're at the level of hopelessness is definitely seek psychological support, for sure. And you can access it easily. So you can access it through IAPT, improving access to psychological therapy, IAPT services. Your GP will be able to refer you to primary care IAPT services. It's called improving access to psychological therapies. And the other option is, if you're a believer in mu'min and you do want to have psychological therapy within an Islamic framework, then there are Muslim psychotherapists who work privately who you can access. And if you want to see me, you can see me. I have a list of Muslim psychotherapists.